In the 41st millennium, there is only war. But war has rules, even in the grim darkness of the far future. Demons can be banished, heretics can be purged, Xenos can be exterminated. Every threat the Imperium faces has a counter, a protocol, a litany of destruction passed down through 10,000 years of bloodshed. But what happens when something arrives that was never meant to exist in this reality? What happens when a force of pure, incorruptible vengeance tears through the veil between worlds and lands in a universe that worships the very things he was made to destroy? The answer came screaming through the sky above Kadia's ash wastes on the 782nd day after the fall. If you crave stories of cosmic collisions and warriors who refuse to kneel before gods or demons, smash that subscribe button. The Emperor protects those who bear witness to the dark millennium, and you won't want to miss what comes next. The warp breach opened without warning. No navigator charted its course. No astropath sensed its birth. Reality simply split open like an infected wound, and something fell through, something burning with energies that made the lingering chaos corruption recoil. The impact crater measured 40 meters across, its edges glassed by heat that had nothing to do with atmospheric entry. Smoke rose in a pillar that could be seen from the Kasser Myrak relay station 15 kilometers distant. Sergeant Varys Kellyn of the Cadian 8th was the first to arrive, leading his decimated squad through the ruins of what had once been a shrine to the God Emperor. His augmetic eye cycled through spectral filters, seeking heat signatures, warp residue, anything that would tell him what fresh hell had landed on this already damned world. The ruins of Kadia had become a graveyard fought over by corpse pickers, renegade warbands, demonic stragglers, and the scattered remnants of Imperial forces too stubborn to abandon their shattered home. "Auspex readings," Kellyn voxed to Trooper Mendev. "Negative, sir. Nothing. It's like the crater's empty." Mendev's voice carried the edge of a man who'd seen too much to trust his instruments anymore. But the crater wasn't empty. At its center, partially buried in obsidian black glass, was a figure clad in armor the color of old bronze and arterial red. The armor bore no Imperial aquila, no Chaos star, no Xenos glyphs, just scarred metal covered in scoring that looked like claw marks from things that had died trying to hurt the man inside. He was massive, easily the size of a space marine, but the proportions were wrong. Too human, too primal. The figure moved. Kellyn's hand went to his last pistol. "Contact. Single target. Center of impact zone. Unknown armor configuration." The warrior rose from the shattered ground like a monument being erected. Molten glass dripped from his boots. His helmet was a brutal thing, angular, eyeless, ancient beyond reckoning. In his right hand hung a weapon that defied categorization, double-barreled, too large for any human to wield, with mechanisms that hummed with power sources Kellyn didn't recognize. "Identify yourself," Kellyn shouted in Gothic, then repeated in gutter chaos cant. Then in Broken Elder, "By order of the God Emperor of mankind, identify yourself or be destroyed." The warrior's head turned toward the Cadians with mechanical precision. For a moment, nobody moved. The wind carried ash across the crater. Somewhere in the distance, artillery rumbled, the endless background noise of Kadia's death throes. Then the Vox network exploded with screaming. "Contacts! Multiple demon signs incoming from the Black Spire wastes!" Kellyn's augmetic eye snapped toward the horizon and immediately registered the horror. 17 signatures moving fast, wreathed in the telltale shimmer of warp spawn manifesting in real space. Blood letters, Khorne's foot soldiers, a hunting pack drawn by the psychic turbulence of the warp breach. The Cadians opened fire immediately. last bolts lancing toward the approaching tide of brass and blood. It wouldn't be enough. It was never enough against demons without sanctified ammunition or psyker support. The unknown warrior didn't wait for orders. He moved like violence given form, crossing 30 meters in a sprint that left cratered footprints in the ash. The double-barreled weapon rose, and when it fired, the sound was wrong. Not the crack of a laser gun or the explosive bark of a bolter, but a roar, primal, mechanical, furious. The first bloodletter took both shells center mass and simply ceased to exist, banished back to the warp in a spray of ichor and screaming. The warrior was already moving to the next target. What followed wasn't combat, it was extermination. He didn't fight like a space marine, no tactical doctrine, no squad coordination, no battle prayers. He fought like a natural disaster given purpose. A bloodletter lunged with its hellblade raised. The warrior caught the demon's wrist mid-swing, twisted until bone cracked, and used the creature's own weapon to decapitate it before the ichor hit the ground. Another demon leaped for his back. Without turning, he fired his weapon point-blank over his shoulder, the blast vaporizing the creature before it could land. When his ammunition depleted, he discarded the weapon and simply attacked. Kellen watched in stunned silence as the warrior grabbed a bloodletter by its horns and slammed it face first into the ground with enough force to create a shockwave. He ripped another demon apart with his bare hands, literally tore it in half at the waist, the creature's essence unraveling as it shrieked its way back to the warp. In 90 seconds, 17 demons lay banished. The warrior stood in the center of the carnage, breathing steadily, gore steaming off his armor. He retrieved his discarded weapon, checked it with practiced efficiency, and turned back toward the Cadians. Sergeant Kellen had fought for 30 years. He'd held the line at the Delvian Gate. He'd survived the 13th Black Crusade. He'd killed heretics, mutants, and xenos without hesitation. He had absolutely no idea what to do about this. The warrior stared at him through that eyeless helm, waiting. "What?" Kellen's voice cracked. He cleared his throat and tried again. "What are you?" The warrior didn't answer. Couldn't answer or wouldn't. Kellen couldn't tell. Instead, he simply turned and began walking toward the ruins of Kasser Mirak, where the Vox chatter indicated more demon activity. Kellen looked at his squad. They looked back, equally lost. "Follow him," Kellen finally ordered. "And Vox command, tell them we've got a situation." Behind them, the warp breach collapsed in on itself, sealing shut as if the universe itself wanted to forget what it had vomited into the Imperium. It was too late for that. The Grey Knights arrived within 6 hours. Kellen had never seen them before. Few Imperial guardsmen lived long enough after encountering demons to require their intervention. But he'd heard the stories, the chamber militant of the Ordo Malleus, warriors whose gene seed came from the Emperor himself, psychically attuned demon hunters whose very existence was a secret worth killing to preserve. They descended from orbit in a Thunderhawk painted silver and steel, landing amid the ruins with the kind of precision that spoke to transhuman calculation. 5 warriors emerged, each standing over 7 feet tall in Terminator armor, inscribed with wards and hexagrammic script that hurt to look at directly. Their helmets bore the insignia of the Third Brotherhood, and the lead knight's armor was marked with honors Kellen couldn't even identify. Brother Captain Garen Crow. His name was legend even among legends. "Sergeant," Crow's voice came through external Vox speakers, distorted by the psychic filters in his armor. "Report the heretic's location." Heretic. They'd already made their judgment. "Sir, he's 3 kilometers northeast. Engaged with demon forces near the old Administratum complex, but, sir, I don't think he's—" "Your thoughts are noted and irrelevant." Withdraw your men to minimum safe distance. The Grey Knights moved with purpose, storm bolters mag-locked to their armor, Nemesis Force weapons crackling with psychic energy. They were the Imperium's ultimate answer to demonic threats. They had never failed. They found the warrior in what had once been a plaza, surrounded by the fading corpses of 43 daemons. He was feeding. That's what it looked like to Kellen, watching through magnoculars from a ruined overpass. Every time the warrior killed a demon, something happened. A flare of energy, visible even to baseline human eyes, flowed from the dying creature into him. The daemons seemed to weaken in his presence, their forms less stable, their movements sluggish. And when he struck them down, their essence didn't just dissipate back into the warp, it was consumed. In the name of the God Emperor, Crow's voice boomed across the plaza, amplified by vox casters. You are charged with heresy of the highest order. Cease your abominable actions and submit to the Emperor's judgment. The warrior turned to face them. Ichor dripped from his gauntlets. His armor's power source, whatever it was, pulsed with light that made the Grey Knight's psychic wards flicker. He didn't submit. He didn't speak. He simply stood there, radiating an aura of barely contained violence. So be it. Chu raised his Nemesis Force sword, and the 4 knights with him opened fire. Storm bolter rounds, each one blessed, each one psychically charged, each one capable of annihilating lesser demons, hammered into the warrior's armor. The sound was deafening, the muzzle flash blinding. 40 bolts in 3 seconds, a fusillade that should have reduced even a Chaos Space Marine to paste. The warrior staggered, stepped back, armor plates cracked. Then he started walking forward. Impossible, Kellen breathed. The Grey Knights maintained fire, adding their psycannons to the barrage. Explosive rounds detonated against the warrior's chest, his shoulders, his helmet. Smoke obscured the plaza. Sanctified flame licked across his armor. Psychic fire meant to burn out corruption at its source. The warrior emerged from the smoke at a full sprint. He hit the first Grey Knight like a meteor strike. The Terminator armor, proof against anti-tank weaponry, buckled under the impact. The knight went down, and before his brothers could react, the warrior had seized his nemesis halberd and driven it through the fallen knight's chest plate, the blessed weapon piercing ceramite and fused ribcage alike. The Grey Knight died instantly, his psychic presence extinguished like a snuffed candle. Heretic! Crow's voice carried genuine shock. You dare! The warrior was already moving. He ducked under a force sword swing that would have decapitated him, came up inside another knight's guard, and struck with the captured halberd. The blade punched through Terminator plate and another Grey Knight. Grey Knight fell, ichor and blood mixing on the shattered ground. This wasn't possible. Grey Knights didn't fall in melee. Their psychic powers gave them precognition. Their training was without equal, their armor blessed by the highest authorities of Mars and Terra. The warrior killed the third knight by breaking his neck, a feat that should have been impossible through Terminator armor's reinforced gorget. Crow and the final knight activated their force weapon's full psychic potential, surrounding themselves with barriers of wraithbone hard will. They attacked in concert, their movements synchronized by psychic communion, their strikes capable of sundering tank armor. The warrior fought back with a chainsword he'd torn from a dead knight's maglock. He used it like he'd been born with it, the roaring blade meeting force sword in a shower of sparks and psychic backwash. When the final knight tried to flank him, the warrior grabbed a chunk of rubble one-handed and hurled it with enough force to shatter the knight's helmet. The stunned Grey Knight took a chainsword to the throat. That left Crow. The brother captain's sword blazed with power, his psychic might fully unleashed. You are an abomination, a tool of the ruinous powers wearing stolen glory. I am the Emperor's will made manifest, and you will—" The warrior shot him. He'd retrieved his strange double-barreled weapon during the melee. At point-blank range, he fired both barrels into Crow's chest. The brother captain's Terminator armor held, barely, but the kinetic force sent him crashing backward through a ruined wall. By the time Crow struggled to his feet, the warrior was gone. Kellen lowered his magnoculars, hands shaking. What in the God Emperor's name was that? Around the plaza, demon corpses were beginning to fade, their physical forms destabilized. But the Grey Knights' bodies remained, slumped in positions of final violence, their armor rent and broken. In 10,000 years of service, the Grey Knights had never lost a full combat squad to a single opponent who wasn't a Daemon Primarch. That record had just ended, and somewhere in the ruins of Cadia, the warrior who'd broken it was still hunting. The Inquisition arrived with an army. Lord Inquisitor Valdez of the Ordo Malleus had been hunting demon cults for 63 years. He'd purged corrupted worlds, broken chaos covens, and sent 10,000 heretics to the Emperor's judgment. He did not take risks with unknown variables. The ruins of Kasser Myrak were now surrounded by 3 companies of Tempestus Scions, 2 squads of surviving Cadian veterans, a detachment of Sisters of Battle from the Order of the Valorous Heart, and, hovering in low orbit, the strike cruiser, unyielding testimony with lances charged and ready to glass the entire sector if needed. The warrior had been tracked to what remained of an Imperial chapel, cornered by coordinated fire teams and sanctified barriers. He hadn't resisted when the Scions deployed their shock mauls, weapons designed to incapacitate even rogue space marines through neural disruption. It took 17 direct hits before the warrior finally went down on one knee, his armor sparking, his body rigid. They bound him with adamantium chains, blessed by the ecclesiarchy. 3 ministrum priests chanted prayers of binding, while Sisters of Battle kept their bolters trained on his head. The warrior never struggled. He simply waited, that eyeless helmet tracking every movement around him. Now he knelt in the chapel's ruins. Chains wrapped around his arms and torso, surrounded by firepower sufficient to kill a small army. Valdez stood before him, flanked by 2 battle sisters and a servo skull, recording every word. "I am Lord Inquisitor Valdez," he began, voice modulated by his rebreather. "You have been subdued under the authority of the immortal God Emperor of mankind. Before this day ends, you will answer for the murder of his holy Grey Knights, and you will explain your nature, origin, and purpose." The warrior said nothing. Valdez had expected this. He'd interrogated everything from chaos cultists to captured Dark Eldar. Silence was just another form of defiance. "Let us establish facts," Valdez continued, circling the warrior slowly. "You arrived through an uncharted warp breach 6 hours and 43 minutes ago. In that time, you have personally slain, according to verified reports, 63 manifested demons of Khorne, 5 Grey Knights of the Third Brotherhood, and 0 Imperial civilians despite ample opportunity. You fight demons with no apparent psychic ability, yet they weaken in your presence. You consume their essence when you kill them, and you carry weapons of unknown origin that function on principles our Mechanicus adepts cannot identify." The warrior's helmet turned slightly, tracking Valdez's movement. "You are no demon. The Grey Knight's psychic senses would have detected it, and the blessed chains binding you would have burned your flesh. You are no Xenos. Your form is human, enhanced, but fundamentally human. You are no space marine. Your armor bears no chapter markings, and genetic scans detect no evidence of gene seed implantation." Valdez stopped directly in front of the warrior, leaning close. "So what are you? A man, a weapon? Some lost relic from the dark age of technology given murderous purpose?" For a long moment there was only silence. Then the warrior moved. The chains didn't break, they held. But the warrior surged against them with such force that the blessed metal groaned, and the bolts anchoring them to the floor cracked. Battle Sisters opened fire immediately, bolt rounds hammering into his armor at near point-blank range. The warrior weathered the storm, ichor and sparks flying, his armor's integrity dropping but holding. "Cease fire!" Valdez commanded. The shooting stopped, the warrior settled back, kneeling once more, his armor smoking. He'd proven his point. The chains held him only because he allowed it. "Interesting," Valdez murmured. "You could have resisted when we captured you. You could have killed dozens during the ambush. But you didn't. Why?" The warrior's helmet tilted slightly, almost curious. Valdez pulled a data slate from his coat and activated it. Pict feeds appeared, showing the carnage from earlier engagements. "These are the daemons you killed, bloodletters primarily, with scattered lesser spawn. You hunted them with precision that suggests extensive experience. No wasted movement, no hesitation, no fear." He swiped to another image, the dead Grey Knights. "And when the Emperor's finest warriors tried to stop you, you killed them without remorse." He looked up from the slate. "Are you a servant of chaos? A fallen champion seeking redemption through slaughter? Some new breed of corn worshipper who fights demons to prove his worth?" The warrior's entire body language shifted, subtle, but Valdez had interrogated enough killers to recognize predatory focus. The warrior leaned forward against his chains, and though his helmet had no eyes, Valdez felt the weight of absolute, undivided attention. Then the warrior spoke. Not in Gothic, not in any language Valdez recognized. A single word, guttural and harsh, spoken with the weight of an oath, forged in blood and maintained across eternity. The Servoskull's recording equipment captured it, ran it through linguistic analysis protocols, and returned 0 matches across 8 million cataloged languages. But Valdez understood its meaning anyway. Every human in the chapel did. On some primal level that transcended words. No, not a rejection, a declaration, a fundamental truth of this being's existence. He was not chaos. He would never be chaos. The very suggestion was anathema to everything he was. "Then what is your purpose?" Valdez pressed. "Why are you here?" The warrior said nothing for a moment. Then he raised his bound hands and pointed, not at Valdez, not at the Battle Sisters, not at the scions surrounding the chapel. He pointed up, toward the sky, toward the Eye of Terror, that festering wound in reality where chaos had its eternal throne. Valdez followed the gesture, understanding, blooming like a cold flower in his chest. "You want to go there, into the eye itself?" The warrior nodded once. "To do what? Die gloriously? Rage against the inevitable? The Eye of Terror is where demons are born, where reality itself bows to chaos. It is the domain of the ruinous powers themselves. Nothing mortal survives there, and even the blessed warriors of the Grey Knights venture in only with the Emperor's direct guidance." The warrior's hand remained pointed at the sky. His body language communicated something beyond determination, beyond fanaticism even. This wasn't a crusade, it wasn't a mission, it was purpose. The only purpose, the reason for his existence. Valdez turned to Sister Superior Adamara. "Your assessment." The Battle Sister's expression was grim behind her helmet. "He is no servant of the dark gods, my lord. I would stake my vows on it. Whatever he is, the demons fear him. I saw it during the engagement. They tried to flee before he killed them." "Confirmed," added Captain Torin of the Scions. "Demon behavior was atypical." Bloodletters don't retreat. They don't show fear. But these did. Valdez studied the warrior for a long moment. The Imperium faced threats on every front. Xenos, heretics, and chaos, eternally gnawing at the borders of sacred terra. Resources were precious, lives were expendable, and here knelt something that killed demons with the efficiency of a Grey Knight strike team, asking for nothing except permission to walk into hell itself. "If I grant your request," Valdez said slowly, "if I provide you transport toward the Eye of Terror, will you continue to kill demons? Will you leave Imperial forces unmolested?" The warrior nodded immediately. "And if you encounter our enemies, chaos cultists, heretic Astartes, demon princes, you will show them no mercy?" Another nod, this one almost eager. Valdez made his decision. It was possibly heretical. It would certainly raise questions from his peers, but he'd spent 6 decades learning to trust his instincts, and his instincts told him that this warrior, whatever he was, might be the most efficient demon-killing weapon in the sector. "Release him," Valdez commanded. "My lord?" Sister Adamara's shock was evident. "He killed 5 Grey Knights." "Who attacked him first after he'd slaughtered 43 demons?" Valdez countered. "The Grey Knights saw an unknown entity consuming demon essence and made assumptions. Perhaps justified, perhaps not. But I will not make the same mistake." He turned back to the warrior as science moved forward to unlock the chains. "I am not your master. I cannot command you, but I offer you this: transport to the regions bordering the Eye of Terror, supplied with ammunition and provisions, in exchange for your cooperation against the forces of chaos. Hunt your demons. Wage your war. But if you turn on Imperial forces, if you prove to be a threat, I will dedicate every resource at my disposal to your destruction." The chains fell away. The warrior stood, towering even over the battle sisters. He rolled his shoulders, testing his mobility, then reached down to retrieve his double-barreled weapon from where it had been placed under guard. He checked the weapon, reloaded it from some internal reserve, and turned back to Valdez. Then he extended his hand. It was a gesture so simple, so human, that it shocked everyone in the chapel. Not a bow, not a salute. A handshake, an acknowledgement between equals, between warriors who recognized each other's purpose. Valdez took the offered hand. The warrior's grip could have crushed his bones. It remained gentle, controlled. "What do we call you?" Valdez asked. "You must have a name, a title." The warrior's helmet turned toward the horizon, where smoke still rose from the latest demon incursion. When he spoke again, it was in that same unknown language, but this time the servo-skull's analysis caught a pattern. Not words exactly, a designation, an identity reduced to its simplest, most fundamental truth. The analysis protocols spat out a translation, rough but workable. Slayer. Valdez released the warrior's hand and stepped back. "Very well, Slayer. May the Emperor guide your blade, even if you do not pray to him. Captain Torhen and will escort you to the unyielding testimony. We depart for the Cadian Gate in 3 hours." The Slayer turned and walked toward the chapel exit, his footsteps heavy on the broken stone. Scions and battle sisters parted before him, weapons lowered but ready. Sister Superior Adamara approached Valdez as the Slayer disappeared into the ruins. "My lord, are you certain this is wise? We know nothing about him, his nature, his origins, his true purpose." "I know that in 6 hours he killed more demons than our entire force managed in 6 weeks," Valdez interrupted. "I know that he fights chaos with a hatred that rivals even the Grey Knights, and I know that we need every advantage we can find." He watched the Slayer's distant form through the chapel's shattered windows. Besides, sister, I want to see what happens when we unleash him on the heretics. If he's the Emperor's gift, we'll know soon enough. And if he's not, Valdez let the sentence hang. They both knew the answer. If the Slayer proved false, they'd already called in a favor from the Death Watch. Let the Zenith hunters deal with him. But something in Valdez's gut told him that wouldn't be necessary. The Slayer had come to this universe for one reason: to kill demons until there were no more demons to kill. And in the 41st millennium, that was a task that would never end. The unyielding testimony translated back into real space 3 days later, emerging from the warp at the edge of the Scarus sector. The ship's Gellar fields collapsed with the usual shudder of violated physics, and the bridge crew immediately began surveying their surroundings with practiced efficiency. Captain Torin stood beside the Slayer on the observation deck, watching the void through armored viewports. The warrior had spent the entire journey in silence, standing motionless for hours at a time, only moving when demon activity was reported in distant sectors. Then he'd track the reports with an intensity that unnerved the crew. "That's our destination," Torin said, pointing toward a crimson star system on the hololith display. "The Forge world of Metallica requested aid 48 hours ago." Chaos forces breached their outer defenses, a warband calling themselves the Crimson Reavers, led by a fallen tech marine who's been augmenting his forces with demonically possessed war engines. The Slayer's helmet turned toward the display, studying the tactical information with apparent comprehension, despite never having seen Imperial star charts before. "The Mechanics don't ask for help lightly," Torin continued. "If they're desperate enough to petition the Inquisition, the situation is worse than their reports suggest. Metallica produces 70% of the sector's plasma weaponry. If it falls, we lose strategic manufacturing capacity and gain a Chaos Fortress world in the sector's heart." The Slayer reached toward the hololith, his armored finger tracing a route through the displayed defenses toward what appeared to be the heaviest concentration of Chaos forces, a corrupted Forge Cathedral designated Epsilon 7. "That's where the Tech Marine is directing operations from," Torin confirmed. "Intelligence suggests he's attempting to birth a demon engine using Metallica's own manufacturing facilities. If he succeeds..." The Slayer tapped the location twice, then looked at Torin. The meaning was clear. "That's where I'm going. Direct insertion into the enemy stronghold." Torin shook his head. "Even with your capabilities, that's suicide. The Crimson Reavers have an estimated 300 Chaos Space Marines, thousands of cultist auxiliaries, and at least 14 identified demon manifestations. The plan is coordinated assault." The Slayer turned away from the hololith and walked toward the armory. Conversation over. Torin followed, exasperated. "You cannot win this alone. Even Space Marine strike forces operate in squads. Even the Grey Knights maintain tactical cohesion. You need support, coordination, intelligence." The Slayer entered the armory and began examining the weapons stored there. Standard Imperial Guard equipment mostly: lace guns, autoguns, frag grenades. He ignored them all, moving to the heavier ordnance. A plasma gun caught his attention. He picked it up, tested its weight, checked the charge indicator with surprising familiarity. Then he found what he was really looking for: the armory's heavy weapons section. A multi-melta sat mounted on a maintenance rack, its fusion core dormant. The Slayer examined it for perhaps 10 seconds, then simply ripped it from its mounting bolts. The weapon weighed over 60 kilograms and required a reinforced harness for normal humans to fire. The Slayer held it one-handed, tested its balance, and nodded in satisfaction. "That weapon requires a backpack power supply," Torosation protested. "You can't possibly." The Slayer mag locked the multi-melta to his armor's hip, then moved to the ammunition stores. He loaded himself with grenades, frag, crack, incendiary, until his armor bristled with ordnance. He took a combat knife designed for Astartes' use, testing its edge against his gauntlet's armored thumb. Satisfied, he sheathed it. Finally, he retrieved his own double-barreled weapon and checked its internal mechanisms. Whatever powered it had adapted during the journey. The weapon hummed with barely contained energy, its core pulsing in rhythm with the Slayer's armor. "Listen to me," Tauren said, stepping into the Slayer's path. "I understand you're a warrior. I respect what you did on Cadia. But Metallica isn't a battlefield. It's an industrial hellscape converted into a fortress. The Chaos forces there are entrenched, supported and led by a genius corrupted by the Dark Gods. You need allies. You need intelligence. You need—" The Slayer placed one hand on Tauren's shoulder, not roughly but firmly enough to move him aside. Then he walked past, heading for the boarding bays. Tauren watched him go, frustration warring with grudging respect. The warrior moved with absolute certainty, as if failure wasn't even a concept he acknowledged. 3 days aboard ship and Tauren still couldn't read him. No prayers, no rituals, no battle cant or tactical discussions. Just cold, focused preparation for violence, like watching a weapon prepare itself for use. "Captain," Sister Superior Adamara's voice came through his vox speed. "The Slayer has requisitioned a Dreadclaw assault pod. He's launching in 5 minutes, whether we're ready or not." "Emperor's teeth," Tauren swore. "Scramble support teams. If he's determined to throw himself at the enemy, we'll at least provide covering fire." "Sir," Lord Inquisitor Valdez gave explicit orders. "Observe but do not interfere unless Imperial forces are directly threatened. The Slayer operates independently." Tauren closed his eyes, offering a brief prayer to the Emperor for patience. "Then observe we shall, but keep strike teams on standby. When this goes wrong, and it will, I want rescue assets ready." "Understood. Sister Adamara out." Tauren made his way to the bridge, arriving just as the launch klaxons sounded. Through the viewport, he watched the Dreadclaw pod eject from the unyielding Testimony's ventral bay, its chemical thrusters igniting in brilliant bursts as it oriented toward Metallica. The planet loomed below, a world of rust-red continents and black oceans of industrial runoff, its surface covered in forge complexes that stretched for thousands of kilometers. Even from orbit, the corruption was visible. Great wounds in reality, where the warp bled through, demonic manifestations flickering like cancerous stars across the northern hemisphere. "Tracking the pod," the augur officer reported. "Trajectory confirmed. Direct insertion into Epsilon 7's industrial sector. No evasive maneuvers, no stealth protocols. He's just going straight in." "Of course he is," Tauren muttered. "Because why would the Emperor's newest mystery warrior bother with tactics?" The Dreadclaw punched through Metallica's atmosphere at terminal velocity, its ablative heat shields glowing white-hot. Anti-aircraft fire reached up from the corrupted forges, tracer rounds and plasma bolts stitching patterns across the sky. The pod flew through the firestorm without deviation, impacting somewhere in Epsilon 7's industrial heart, with enough force to register on the ship's sensors. Then came the killing. The Vox network, monitored by the unyielding Testimony's tech priests, suddenly exploded with chaos chatter. Screaming, orders, panic. The cultists' communications discipline, such as it was, collapsed within minutes. "They're reporting." The Vox officer paused, confusion evident. "Sir, they're reporting a single target. One warrior. They're calling him the Burning One. He's advancing through Sector Epsilon 7 Alpha, killing everything in his path. The cultists are requesting Chaos Space Marine support." Tor Hansen pulled up tactical feeds from servo skulls deployed across the planet. The pic captures were grainy, corrupted by warp interference, but clear enough. The Slayer moved through the Forge Cathedral like judgment incarnate. Cultists died in droves, the multi-melta vaporizing entire squads, his double-barreled weapon punching through improvised barricades, his bare hands breaking those foolish enough to engage in melee. He didn't slow, didn't take cover, didn't stop. When demons manifested to block his path, lesser demons of Khorne, drawn by the bloodshed, the Slayer killed them with the same cold efficiency he'd shown on Cadia. That strange energy absorption happened again. Each demon that fell seemed to feed him, their essence consumed, his movements becoming fractionally faster and more violent. "Sir," the augur officer said quietly, "the Chaos forces are retreating. The Crimson Reaver's Chaos Space Marines are pulling back from the outer sectors, consolidating around the central Demon Forge." Torin watched the tactical display update in real time. The Slayer's advance was marked by a spreading zone of cleared territory, not captured, simply emptied of life. The Chaos forces weren't routing. They were being systematically exterminated by something they couldn't stop. "How many has he killed?" Torin asked. "Estimated 300 cultists in 20 minutes. 17 confirmed daemon banishments. Unknown number of corrupted servitors and war constructs. Sir, at this rate, he'll reach the Demon Forge in less than an hour." And then, the augur officer didn't answer. Nobody on the bridge did. They were watching something that defied their understanding of warfare. Space Marines were transhuman warriors, elevated beyond mortal limits. The Grey Knights were psychic champions, wielding the Emperor's own power. Even the greatest Imperial heroes fought as part of armies, supported by logistics and doctrine. The Slayer fought like a force of nature, inevitable, unstoppable, alone. "Continue monitoring," Torin ordered, "and pray to the Emperor that when he reaches the Demon Forge, he's everything Lord Valdez believes him to be." In the Forge Cathedral below, the Slayer reloaded his weapons, stepped over a pile of cultist corpses, and continued walking deeper into hell. He'd done this before, in another universe, against another hell. This one would fall the same way. The Demon Forge of Epsilon 7 had once been a sacred manufacturing cathedral, a place where the Omnissiah's faithful crafted plasma reactors and blessed lass weapons for the Emperor's armies. Now it was a monument to desecration, its Gothic spires twisted into blasphemous angles, its assembly lines repurposed to forge corruption into steel, its machine spirits screaming in digitized agony as chaos warp code infected their logic cores. At its center, in what had once been the High Fabricator's sanctum, the fallen tech marine known as Vorash the Desecrator stood before his greatest work. The demon engine towered 12 meters tall, a grotesque fusion of tank chassis, chaos space marine armor plating, and something that might have once been a dreadnought sarcophagus. Warp energy pulsed through exposed conduits, and within the thing's core, a greater demon of Khorne waited to be born, or birthed, or summoned. The distinction blurred when dealing with demon engines. "Status," Vorash commanded, his voice a synthesized rasp emerging from vocal emetics corrupted by decades of chaos worship. "The final rituals are complete, my lord," a cultist tech priest reported, his red robes stained with oil and blood. "The engine requires only ignition. 144 sacrifices have been prepared. The warp conduits are stable. Upon your command." The Vox network screamed, not metaphorically. The actual equipment shrieked, audio pickups overloading as something tore through the forge's lower levels with methodical violence. Pict feeds showed corridors filled with cultist corpses, servitor wrecks smoking from catastrophic systems failures, and advancing through it all. "What is that?" Vorash demanded, zooming the feed. The figure was humanoid, armored, carrying weapons that registered on Auspex scans as simultaneously imperial and utterly alien. It moved through Vorish's defenses like they were tissue paper, killing with mechanical precision. A squad of chaos cultists opened fire from behind a barricade. The intruder's response was immediate. A beam of superheated fusion energy vaporized the barricade and everyone behind it. "Deploy the Crimson Reavers," Vorash ordered. "Kill it." 8 Chaos Space Marines, veterans of the Long War who'd fought since the Horus Heresy, moved to intercept. They were clad in corrupted Mark IV power armor, their weapons blessed by dark rituals, their bodies enhanced by demonic mutations that made them even deadlier than their loyalist counterparts. The picked feed captured their encounter. The Chaos Marines opened fire with bolters, mass reactive rounds designed to annihilate infantry. The intruder tanked the first volley, armor sparking but holding, then returned fire with that double-barreled weapon. The first Chaos Marine took both barrels center mass and was thrown backward, his armor ruptured, his enhanced biology struggling to heal damage that seemed to burn with unnatural energy. The intruder didn't give him time to recover. He closed the distance in seconds, moving faster than any human should, and engaged in melee. Vorsh watched in growing horror as his veterans were systematically dismantled. The intruder fought like he'd been killing Chaos Space Marines his entire existence, exploiting armor weak points, using their own weapons against them when opportunities arose, and demonstrating strength that matched or exceeded their enhanced physiology. When a Chaos Marine tried to pin him with a power fist, the intruder caught the blow one-handed, twisted the Marine's arm until the elbow joint broke, and used the compromised warrior as a shield against his brother's bolter fire. When another Marine attempted a chain axe strike, the intruder ducked under it, came up with a combat knife, and drove the blade through the Marine's neck seal, one of the few vulnerabilities in power armor. In 90 seconds, 8 Chaos Space Marines lay dead or dying. "Impossible," Vorash whispered. "Those were heretic Astartes, veterans of 10,000 years of warfare. What manner of creature?" "My lord," the cultist interrupted, terror evident in his voice. "He's coming here, directly toward the Demon Forge. He's not securing territory or eliminating resistance. He's just walking straight toward us." Vorash pulled up the intruder's projected route. The cultist was right. Every action, every kill, every turn had been calculated to bring the intruder to this exact location. He wasn't clearing the forge. He was hunting. "How did he know?" Vorash demanded. "How could he possibly know where the demon engine is located? We've maintained Vox silence, deployed counterintelligence protocols. The intruder appeared on every picked feed simultaneously, his image multiplying across dozens of screens as he entered the Demon Forge's central chamber. He stood at the entrance, silhouetted against flames from burning equipment, weapons reloaded and ready. For a moment, Vorash and the intruder stared at each other across 300 meters of corrupted factory floor. Then the intruder started walking forward. "Activate the demon engine," Vorash commanded. "Now, incomplete summoning, full combat protocols, emergency ignition. I don't care. Activate it now!" Cultists scrambled to comply, throwing switches and chanting blasphemous rituals. The demon engine shuddered, warp energy flooding its systems. The greater demon within began to manifest, its presence warping reality around it. The temperature spiked. Metal groaned. Madness leaked from the engine like radiation. The intruder kept walking. "Kill him!" Vorash roared. Every remaining defender opened fire. Cultists with autoguns, corrupted servitors with industrial weapons, mutated beastmen with scavenged lasguns. The barrage should have shredded anything short of a tank. The intruder walked through it. His armor took hits, dozens of them, but he didn't stop, didn't slow, didn't acknowledge the damage. When cultists got too close, he killed them without breaking stride. A mutant lunged with a chainsword. The intruder caught it by the throat, crushed its windpipe, and discarded the corpse without looking. The daemon engine was fully active now, its weapon systems coming online. Autocannons tracked the intruder. Las Cannons charged, and the greater demon's influence radiated outward in waves of psychic pressure that should have driven any mortal insane. The intruder aimed his multi-melta at the demon engine and fired. The fusion beam struck the engine's leg joint, superheating metal to plasma in microseconds. The demon engine staggered, its targeting systems disrupted. It returned fire, autocannon rounds chewing up the floor where the intruder had been standing. But he was already moving, circling, firing again. Another fusion beam, another leg joint compromised. The demon engine roared, not mechanically, but with the voice of the greater demon trapped within it. The sound was hatred given form, rage that transcended language. It activated its close combat protocols, charging forward despite damaged locomotion, attempting to crush the intruder beneath multi-ton bulk. The intruder didn't retreat. He switched weapons, back to his double-barreled gun, and fired both barrels into the demon engine's exposed power core. The explosion was catastrophic. Warp energy and physical detonation merged, sending shockwaves across the factory floor. The greater demon's half-manifested form shrieked as its physical anchor was destroyed, its essence pulled back into the immaterium in a vortex of screaming unreality. When the smoke cleared, the demon engine was a smoking ruin, its corrupted machine spirit silenced forever, and the intruder was still standing, barely scorched, already reloading. Vorash activated his own combat augmetics, servo arms extending, plasma cutters igniting, corrupted bionics flooding his system with stimulants and rage. He was a tech marine blessed by the Dark Mechanicus, enhanced beyond even standard Chaos Space Marine capabilities. He would not fall to some unknown. The intruder shot him in the chest before he could finish the thought. Vorash crashed backward, armor ruptured, internal organs struggling to function. He tried to rise, tried to activate emergency protocols, tried to call for reinforcements that no longer existed. The intruder walked over to him, weapon still smoking. Up close, Vorash could see details he'd missed on the peaked feeds. The armor covered in scoring from 1,000 battles. The eyeless helmet that somehow tracked his every movement, the absolute absence of mercy in the figure's body language. "What are you?" Vorash gasped, blood leaking from his vocal augmetics. The intruder didn't answer. He simply aimed his weapon at Vorash's head and fired. The Crimson Reavers' leadership died in that moment, their carefully constructed demonic cathedral reduced to burning wreckage, their demon engine destroyed before it could take a single step outside the forge. The Slayer stood amid the carnage, his armor's sensors detecting no more immediate threats. Around him, fires burned, machinery sparked, and cultist corpses lay in piles. He'd cleared the entire demon forge in 47 minutes. He retrieved fallen ammunition, bolter rounds, plasma cartridges, anything compatible with his salvaged weapons, and began the walk back to the surface. There were more forges, more cultists, more demons, and he had eternity to kill them all. The liberation of Metallica took 6 more days. Not because the Chaos forces were particularly resilient. The Slayer had decapitated their leadership and destroyed their primary asset within an hour of landing, but because the Forge world was vast and corruption had spread through thousands of square kilometers of industrial infrastructure, rooting out every last cultist cell. Every possessed servitor, every lurking demon required systematic cleansing. The Slayer did it alone. Imperial forces arriving 2 days after the initial assault found entire forge districts cleared of chaos taint. Cultist strongholds reduced to charnel houses. demon summoning circles broken, and their practitioners scattered in pieces across desecrated altars. The Slayer moved through Metallica like a wildfire, consuming everything corrupted and leaving only silence in his wake. By the third day, the remaining Chaos forces had stopped trying to fight him. They ran, they hid. They begged their dark gods for salvation that never came. The Slayer hunted them down anyway, methodical and implacable. Lord Inquisitor Valdez arrived on the fifth day aboard a Valkyrie transport, escorted by Sister Superior Adamara and a full squad of battle sisters. They found the Slayer in what had once been Forge Cathedral Prime, standing amid the ruins of a cornate ritual circle. 17 cultists lay dead around him, their bodies positioned in ways that suggested they'd died trying to complete a final summoning. They'd failed. The demon they'd attempted to call never manifested. "Slayer!" Valdez called out, his rebreather filtering Metallica's toxic air. "A word, if you would." The Slayer turned, his armor even more damaged than before. Burn marks scored the bronze plating. Bolter impacts had cracked ceramite. His left pauldron hung by a single bolt. Yet he moved without apparent discomfort, weapons ready, that eyeless helmet tracking the inquisitorial party with mechanical precision. "I bring word from the Fabricator General of Metallica," Valdez continued, approaching cautiously. "He wishes to express the Mechanicus's gratitude. You've saved 17 forge complexes, preserved 32 sacred STC patterns, and eliminated chaos corruption that would have taken months to purge through conventional means. The Omnicia smiles upon you," he says. The Slayer said nothing. His helmet tilted slightly, listening perhaps, or simply waiting for Valdez to get to the point. "The Fabricator General also wishes to offer compensation. New armor, weapons forged in Metallica's most sacred furnaces, augmetic enhancements if you desire them. Tech priests who could..." The Slayer raised one hand, a simple gesture. "Stop. You want nothing," Valdez said, understanding. "No reward, no recognition, no honors or titles." He paused, studying the warrior through his rebreather's eye lenses. "You simply want to continue hunting." The Slayer nodded once. "Then I have something you'll find far more valuable than the Mechanicus's gratitude." Valdez pulled a data slate from his coat and activated it. A star map appeared, showing the region surrounding the Eye of Terror. Red markers indicated known chaos incursions, demon manifestations, and heretic strongholds. There were hundreds of them. "These are confirmed chaos targets within 3 sectors of our current position," Valdez explained. Worlds under siege, space hulks infested with demons, chaos fleets raiding Imperial shipping lanes. Some of these threats we've been fighting for decades. Some are recent developments. All of them represent concentrations of demon activity. The Slayer stepped closer, examining the map with clear interest. "The Imperium lacks the resources to address them all simultaneously," Valdez continued. "We triage. We save what we can and abandon the rest. But you're not constrained by logistics, politics, or doctrine. You don't need supply lines or reinforcements or orders from Terra. You simply need targets." Valdez highlighted a particular system, a dead world called Warhammer 4, recently overrun by a cornate warband led by a demon prince. "This one is 3 weeks away by warp travel. The world is lost. We've already evacuated what few civilians survived, but the demon prince is using it as a staging ground for incursions into neighboring systems. If someone could eliminate the leadership..." The Slayer tapped the map, marking Warhammer 4. Then he tapped 3 other systems in rapid succession, each one another chaos stronghold. "You want all of them," Valdez said, a smile touching his lips despite himself. "Of course you do." He deactivated the map and looked directly at the Slayer. Here's what I propose. I provide you with transport, intelligence, and basic resupply. You operate independently, hitting targets of opportunity as you see fit. You answer to no one, not to me, not to the Mechanicus, not even to the Ecclesiarchy. Your only obligation is simple: kill demons, kill heretics, kill anything that serves the ruinous powers. The Slayer extended his hand. The gesture was immediate, decisive. Valdez shook it, feeling the barely restrained strength in the warrior's grip. One more thing, he added. Your actions here have attracted attention. The Ordos are asking questions. Some believe you're a weapon from the dark age of technology, lost and now recovered. Others think you're a mutant, possibly unstable. A few even suggest you're a demon yourself, bound in human form, serving some unknowable purpose. The Slayer's helmet angled slightly, waiting for Valdez's conclusion. I don't care what you are, Valdez said bluntly. I care what you do. And what you do is kill the Emperor's enemies with efficiency that borders on miraculous. So, until you prove otherwise, you have my support. Use it wisely. He released the Slayer's hand and stepped back. The unyielding testimony departs for Vornak 4 in 6 hours. If you're not aboard, I'll assume you've found your own path. Either way, may the Emperor, or whatever power guides you, watch over your war. The Slayer turned and began walking toward the Forge Cathedral's exit. Then he paused, looked back at Valdez, and spoke. A single word in that harsh, unknown language. The servo skull accompanying Valdez analyzed it immediately, translating. Understood. Then the Slayer was gone, disappearing into Metallica's industrial maze. Sister Adamara approached Valdez, her expression troubled. My lord, are you certain this is wise? We still know nothing concrete about him, his origins, his true nature, whether he can be trusted. I know that he killed 300 Chaos cultists, destroyed a demon engine, and eliminated a Chaos tech marine without requesting support, supplies, or even basic intelligence, Valdez interrupted. I know that demons fear him, and Chaos forces flee before him. In a galaxy where every advantage matters, that's enough. But what if he turns on us? What if his hatred of demons extends to the Imperium's sanctioned psychers, to the Emperor himself, who sits on the golden throne sustained by souls? Valdez considered this carefully. Then, sister, we'll deal with that when it happens. But until that day comes, I choose to believe we've found something the Imperium desperately needs, a weapon that asks nothing except the opportunity to kill our enemies. He looked up at Metallica's toxic sky, where the eye of terror was barely visible through layers of industrial smog. The long war has raged for 10,000 years, sister. Perhaps it's time the Chaos Gods learn to fear something too. On the other side of the Forge world, the Slayer stood atop a ruined cathedral spire, looking toward that same poisoned sky. His armor systems had already catalogued and mapped the target zones from Valdez's briefing. Vornak 4, 3 weeks away, a demon prince waiting. His hand clenched into a fist, servo motors whirring. He'd done this before, would do it again. Would do it forever if necessary. Because in the end, there was only one truth he recognized. Demons existed to be destroyed. Gods existed to be slain. Hell existed to be conquered. And he was very, very good at his job. Vornak Phi had been a mining colony once. 30,000 souls extracting promethium from subterranean reservoirs, shipping fuel to the Imperial Navy, living lives of quiet desperation beneath a red giant star. Then the warp storms came, and with them, the demon prince Karxel the Blood-Crowned. The evacuation had saved perhaps 3,000 civilians. The rest became sacrifices, their skulls added to the growing throne Karxel was constructing in what had once been the planetary governor's palace. For 6 months, the Demon Prince had ruled Vornak 4 unopposed, using it as a staging ground for raids into neighboring systems, slowly transforming the world into a demon world, a piece of the warp made manifest in real space. The unyielding testimony translated into the system at maximum safe distance, its auger arrays immediately detecting the corruption. Vornak 4's surface glowed with warp energy, great tears in reality pulsing like infected wounds. The very planet was dying, its core destabilizing as chaos physics overwrote natural law. "Emperor, preserve us," Captain Torin whispered, studying the tactical displays. "The planet's almost completely transformed. Another month and it'll be irrecoverable, a permanent demon world in Imperial space." Lord Inquisitor Valdez stood beside him, his expression grim behind his rebreather. "How many hostiles?" "Estimated 40,000 cultists, unknown number of demons. The warp interference makes accurate counts impossible. And Kark Sul himself, of course. A greater demon of Khorne elevated to Demon Prince status approximately 800 years ago during the Angevine Crusade. Responsible for the destruction of 17 Imperial worlds, banished 4 times by Grey Knight intervention, always managing to return. "Not this time," Valdez said quietly. The Slayer stood at the observation deck, studying Vornak 4 through the viewport. His armor had been partially repaired by Metallica's tech priests, reluctantly after Valdez had insisted, but he'd refused most enhancements. Only critical damage had been addressed. The rest he wore like a second skin, comfortable with the weight of battles past. "Your insertion point," Valdez said, activating a hololith beside the Slayer. "The palace complex where Kark Sul has established his throne. Intelligence suggests he's conducting a ritual, attempting to permanently anchor himself to Vornak 4's material form. If he succeeds, removing him becomes exponentially more difficult." The Slayer studied the palace layout, his helmet tracking details with mechanical precision. The structure was massive, a kilometer of corrupted Gothic architecture, surrounded by fortifications manned by fanatic cultists and patrolled by demon packs. Conventional assault would require a full Space Marine company and weeks of preparation. The Slayer tapped the palace's central spire, Kark Sul's throne room, then looked at Valdez. "Direct assault," Valdez confirmed. "I expected nothing less. We'll provide orbital fire support where possible, but the warp storms make accuracy problematic. You'll be largely on your own once you're planet-side." The Slayer nodded, already turning toward the boarding bays. "One more thing," Valdez called after him. The warrior paused, looking back. "Kark Sul isn't like the lesser demons you've faced. He's ancient, powerful, and has survived encounters with some of the Imperium's finest warriors. He won't be killed easily. He won't be killed permanently, not in real space. The best you can achieve is banishment, sending him screaming back to the warp for perhaps a century before he reforms." The Slayer's body language shifted, subtle but readable to someone who'd been watching him for weeks. That wasn't acceptable. Banishment wasn't enough. He didn't hunt to delay. He hunted to end. "I know," Valdez said, understanding. "But that's the nature of demons in this universe. They're creatures of the warp, sustained by belief and emotion. As long as war and bloodshed exist, Khorne exists. As long as Khorne exists, his demons can return. It's a truth the Imperium has lived with for 10 millennia." The Slayer stood silent for a long moment, processing this information. Then he turned and continued toward the boarding bay. His gait hadn't changed. His purpose hadn't wavered. If demons could return, he'd just kill them again and again, forever if necessary. Valdez watched him go, a strange mixture of admiration and pity stirring in his chest. "Sister Adamara," he voxed, Prepare for planetary bombardment. If the Slayer actually manages to banish Karksul, I want immediate land-lance strikes on the palace complex. We'll burn whatever corruption remains to ash." "Understood, my lord, and if the Slayer falls?" Valdez didn't answer immediately. He'd seen the warrior fight, seen him shrug off wounds that would kill Space Marines, seen him tear through demons like they were mortal flesh. But Karksul was different. Karksul was a god in miniature, a being of pure warp stuff wearing reality like an uncomfortable suit. "Then we'll mourn him as we mourn all who fall in the Emperor's service," Valdez finally said, "and we'll finish what he started." The Dreadclaw pod hit Vornak 4's surface like a meteor, punching through the palace's outer walls and embedding itself in what had once been a grand ceremonial hall. Cultists died in the impact, crushed by falling masonry, flash burned by the pod's heat shields, or simply torn apart by the shockwave. The Slayer emerged before the smoke cleared, weapons already firing. The palace interior was a nightmare-made architecture. Flesh grew from walls in tumor-like clusters. Blood ran in channels carved into the floor, feeding demonic glyphs that pulsed with unholy light. The air itself was thick with warp energy. Reality thinned to the point where looking too long at any surface revealed glimpses of the Imperium beneath. Cultists surged forward, screaming devotion to the blood god. The Slayer met them with methodical violence, his super shotgun thundering, each blast annihilating multiple targets, his multi-melta sweeping across packed formations and leaving only ash. When they got close, he killed with hands and feet, every movement economical, every strike lethal. The first demon pack arrived within minutes. Bloodletters, their brass blades hungry for skulls. The Slayer engaged them in the palace's corrupted corridors, turning the environment into a weapon. When 3 demons charged simultaneously, he collapsed a support column onto them, then executed the stunned creatures with point-blank fusion fire. When a bloodletter lunged from an alcove, he caught its blade arm, twisted until the limbs separated, and used the severed appendage to impale another demon. His armor's energy absorption function activated with each kill, that strange resonance that occurred whenever demons died in his presence. The effect was more pronounced here, perhaps because Vornak IV's reality was so thin. Each banished daemon fed him strength, clarity, momentum. He pushed deeper into the palace, following the thickest concentrations of warp energy. The corruption intensified with every level he climbed, walls breathing, floors bleeding, architecture that defied geometry, twisting into configurations that shouldn't exist. Cultists and demons threw themselves at him in waves, each assault more desperate than the last. They all died the same way. By the time the Slayer reached the throne room's entrance, he'd killed an estimated 800 cultists and 37 demons. His armor was scorched, dented, leaking fluids from damaged seals. His ammunition stores were depleted to perhaps 40%. His weapons barrels glowed cherry red from continuous use. He reloaded methodically, checked his remaining ordnance, and kicked open the throne room's doors. The chamber beyond was obscene in its grandeur. 1,000 meters across, its ceiling lost in blood-red mist, its floor carpeted with skulls arranged in intricate patterns. At the far end sat the throne, a mountain of brass and bone, with Karksul, the blood-crowned, upon it. The demon prince was magnificent and terrible, 4 meters tall, even seated, his form a grotesque fusion of demonic power and corrupted majesty. Brass armor covered skin the color of arterial blood. His head bore a crown of curved horns, each one inscribed with names in languages that hurt to perceive. In his right hand he held a blade the size of a man, its edge weeping blood that evaporated into screaming faces before hitting the floor. Karksul's eyes, 8 of them, arranged in 2 vertical rows, fixed on the Slayer. When he spoke, reality rippled around the words. "You dare enter my domain, mortal. You who reek of weakness and fear. I am Karkshul, the blood-crowned, favored of Khorne, destroyer of worlds. Your skull will join the throne, and your essence will feed the blood god's eternal hunger." The Slayer's response was to aim his super shotgun at the demon prince's face and fire both barrels. The blessed pellets, scavenged from dead cultists, still carrying residual chaos corruption that ironically made them effective against demons, struck Karksul's head in a tight spread. The demon prince recoiled, more from surprise than damage, ichor leaking from a dozen minor wounds. Then Karksul laughed. The sound was wrong. Too many voices, too many octaves, layered across dimensions the human ear wasn't meant to perceive. "Oh, you are no mere mortal, are you? I sense it now, the absence where your fear should be, the void where your soul might dwell. What manner of abomination are you, little hunter?" The Slayer dropped the empty shotgun and drew his multi-melta. His answer was written in fusion fire. Karksul moved faster than something his size had any right to, vaulting from his throne and crossing the distance in 2 massive strides. His blade descended in an overhead strike that would have split a land raider in half. The Slayer rolled aside, the blade missing by centimeters and carving a trench through the skull floor deep enough to expose the chamber below. The Slayer came up firing, the multi-melta beam striking Karksul's exposed flank. The demon prince screamed, not in pain but in outrage, as his demonic essence boiled away where the fusion energy touched it. The wound tried to regenerate, warp energy flooding the damage, but something about the Slayer's weapons interfered with the healing process. They circled each other across the throne room, predator and prey, though which was which remained unclear. Karksul attacked with the fury of a god, each strike carrying enough force to pulverize adamantium. The Slayer evaded, countered, adapted. When the demon prince overextended, the Slayer punished him with precise weapon fire. When Karksul summoned warp flames, the Slayer weathered them, his armor systems straining but holding. Minutes stretched into an hour. The throne room became a battlefield, its architecture shattered by their violence. Karksul began to understand what he was facing. Not a hero, not a champion, not even a particularly skilled warrior. A mechanism, a killing device given human form and singular purpose. "You cannot win!" Karksul roared, his blade scoring a deep hit across the Slayer's chest plate. "I am eternal. I am Khorne's chosen. You are nothing but meat and rage." The Slayer's armor sparked, systems failing, servos grinding. He staggered, went down on one knee. Karksul raised his blade for the killing blow, triumph radiating from his form like heat. The Slayer caught the descending blade with his bare hands. Impossible. The weapon was demon-forged, empowered by 8 centuries of slaughter. It should have carved through his gauntlets like they were parchment. But the Slayer's grip held, his strength matching and then exceeding the demon prince's. That energy absorption effect activated at maximum intensity, not just drawing from Karksul's essence, but draining it, pulling the demonic power directly from its source. Karksul's eyes widened in something the blood god's servants rarely experienced. Fear. What? What are you? The Slayer wrenched the blade from Karksul's grip, reversed it, and drove it into the demon prince's chest. The effect was catastrophic. Karksul's own weapon turned against him, disrupted the warp energy sustaining his physical form. He began to unravel, his essence pulled back toward the Imperium in a violent unwinding that sent shockwaves across the entire palace. No, I am eternal. I will return. I always return. The Slayer leaned close, his eyeless helmet inches from Kark Sul's face. Then he spoke, not in Gothic, not in any language the Demon Prince recognized, but in a tongue that carried weight beyond mere sound. The servo skulls recording from orbit would later translate it as simply, "I'll be waiting." Kark Sul, the blood-crowned, was banished, his form dissolving into screaming warp stuff that fled back to the Imperium. His throne collapsed, the skulls comprising it turning to dust. The corruption saturating Vornik Vafor's palace began to fade, reality reasserting itself as the Demon Prince's anchor point was destroyed. The Slayer stood alone in the ruins, breathing heavily, armor critically damaged, weapons depleted, but alive, victorious. From orbit, Valdez watched the palace's warp signature collapse. "He did it," the Inquisitor whispered. "Emperor's mercy, he actually did it." "Lance strikes, my lord?" Sister Adamara asked. "No," Valdez said after a moment. "Hold fire. Give him time to extract." On Vornak 4's surface, the Slayer walked through the dying palace, past thousands of cultist corpses toward the landing zone. The planet was dying too, its transformation into a demon world interrupted, its corruption fading. But the damage too severe for reclamation. It would be a dead world. But it wouldn't be a demon world. That was enough. The campaign that followed Vornak 4 lasted 8 months and touched 17 worlds. Word spread across the Imperium's demon hunters, whispered in Grey Knight sanctuaries, discussed in inquisitorial conclaves, debated in ecclesiarchal chambers. A warrior of unknown origin who killed Daemons with unprecedented efficiency, who operated alone, who asked nothing of the Imperium except coordinates and targets. They called him many things: the Burning Judge, the Silent Executioner, the Godslayer. But among those who fought beside him or watched him work, he was known simply as the Slayer. His pattern was consistent: arrive at corrupted worlds, identify demon leadership, eliminate them with brutal directness. No speeches, no grand strategies, no heroic last stands, just methodical, efficient extermination. On Callista Prime, he destroyed a Slaaneshi cult that had operated in secret for 3 generations, their hidden temple reduced to ash in a single night. On Mordak's station, he boarded a space hulk infested with Nurgle demons and purged it deck by deck, emerging 12 hours later covered in ichor, but victorious. On Thrasa 7, he disrupted a Zient Chian summoning ritual by simply killing every sorcerer involved before they could complete their incantations. The Chaos forces began to adapt. Warbands that would normally fight each other to the death temporarily allied when the Slayer was reported in their sector. Demon princes who had ignored each other for millennia coordinated their efforts. Chaos Space Marine warlords issued bounties, not in gold or slaves, but in promises of dark blessings for whoever brought them the Slayer's head. None succeeded. But the strain was showing. The Slayer's armor, despite constant field repairs, was deteriorating. His weapons, pushed far beyond their design specifications, required increasingly frequent maintenance, and the enemies were learning, developing tactics specifically to counter his approach, preparing ambushes, exploiting his singular focus on demon targets to endangered Imperial forces and force difficult choices. It came to a head on Belarius Secundus. The world had been under siege for 6 weeks. A Black Legion warband led by the Chaos Lord Mordrak, the Despoiler, attempting to break the planet's defenses and claim its forge cities for the Dark Mechanicus. The Imperial Guard regiments defending Belarius were exhausted, their ranks depleted, their ammunition critically low. The Slayer arrived to find not just demons, but a full Chaos Space Marine assault force supported by corrupted Titans, traitor guard regiments, and a demon prince coordinating the entire operation from a mobile command fortress. Lord Inquisitor Valdez, coordinating with the planet's defense forces, laid out the situation in the command bunker deep beneath the capital city. "The situation is untenable," General Kashshir said bluntly, his uniform stained with ash and blood. "We've lost the northern forge districts. Our artillery is down to 12% ammunition. The civilian population is trapped in the Underhive with no evacuation routes. And Mordrak's final assault begins in 72 hours. "Reinforcements?" Valdez asked. 3 weeks away at minimum. The warp storms are disrupting all transit in the sector. We're on our own." Valdez turned to the Slayer, who stood studying tactical maps with intense focus. "Your assessment?" The Slayer pointed to the mobile command fortress, a massive structure rolling across Belarius's ash wastes on cathedral-sized tracks, bristling with weapons and protected by warp-forged shields. Then he pointed to himself. "You want to assault the fortress alone," Valdez said. "Kill Mordrak and the Demon Prince, decapitate their leadership." The Slayer nodded. "It's suicide," General Kashshir said flatly. "That fortress is protected by 3 companies of Chaos Space Marines, demon packs, and warp shields that can repel orbital bombardment. Even a full Space Marine strike force would struggle to breach it." The Slayer's posture didn't change. He simply waited for Valdez's decision. "If you attack the fortress, Tor, you draw their focus away from the city," Valdez said slowly, thinking through the implications. "The civilians might have time to evacuate. The guard regiments could consolidate and fortify the remaining districts. But you'd be facing the entire Chaos Force essentially alone." The Slayer made a gesture, spreading his hands, then bringing them together. The meaning was clear. "That's the point." "You're volunteering to be bait," Sister Adamara said, stepping forward, "to sacrifice yourself so the defenders can survive." The Slayer shook his head, not a denial of sacrifice, but a rejection of the certainty of death. He'd faced worse before. He'd survived worse. And if he didn't survive, at least he'd take as many demons with him as possible. Valdez studied the warrior for a long moment. In 8 months of campaigning, he'd learned to read the Slayer's body language, to understand the absolute conviction that drove every action. This wasn't bravery. It wasn't even heroism in the conventional sense. It was function. The Slayer existed to kill demons. Everything else, his survival, his reputation, the Imperium's gratitude, was secondary. "Very well," Valdez said. "We'll coordinate a full evacuation of the civilian zones. General Kashshir, pull your forces back to the inner defenses. Fortify and wait. The Slayer will assault the fortress in 6 hours at sunset. We'll provide what fire support we can, but ultimately," he looked at the Slayer, "you'll be on your own." The Slayer nodded once, turned, and walked toward the armory. Sister Adamara followed him. "Slayer, wait," he paused, looking back. "Why?" she asked simply. "Why do this? You owe the Imperium nothing. You could leave, find another target, fight battles you might actually win. Why throw yourself at impossible odds for people you don't know on a world you'll never see again?" The Slayer stood silent for a moment. Then he tapped his chest, where his armor's power core pulsed with that strange energy, and pointed toward the fortress on the tactical display, visible through the bunker's blast doors. The meaning was unmistakable. Because demons exist there, and I exist to kill them. "That's it?" Adamara's voice carried something between admiration and frustration. "No greater purpose, no divine calling. Just demons need killing, so you kill them?" The Slayer nodded. "What if you die? What if this is the battle you can't win?" The Slayer's helmet tilted slightly. Then he made a gesture, a shrug. so human and unexpected that Adamara almost laughed despite the tension. "Then I die. The demons will still be dead." He continued toward the armory, leaving Sister Adamara standing in the corridor, watching him go. "Emperor, preserve us," she whispered. "We found the most dangerous man in the galaxy, and he doesn't even realize it." Sunset on Bellaria Secundus was a blood-red affair, the dying light filtering through ash clouds from burning forge cities. The Slayer stood at the edge of the capital's defensive perimeter, fully armed and equipped. His armor had been hastily repaired by the Mechanicus tech priests, not restored, but stabilized. His weapons were loaded with the last of his specialized ammunition and supplemented with scavenged Imperial ordnance. It wouldn't be enough. Everyone knew it wouldn't be enough. He walked toward the fortress anyway. The Chaos forces spotted him when he was still 3 kilometers out, a single figure crossing the ash wastes, silhouetted against the red sky. At first, they thought it was a mistake, a single soldier separated from his unit and stumbling toward their lines in shock. Then they recognized the armor. Mordrak, the Despoiler, received the report in his command throne, deep within the mobile fortress. "The Slayer is here." The Chaos Lord's voice was a synthesized rasp, his vocal cords long since replaced with demonic augmetics. "Alone?" "Yes, Lord Mordrak, walking directly toward our position." Mordrak laughed, a sound that made servitors shut down and cultists weep blood. "The fool thinks to challenge us, to assault our fortress with no army, no support. Nothing but his primitive weapons and misguided rage." He activated the fortress's Vox systems, broadcasting across all channels. "Slayer, I know you can hear me, you who have been a thorn in the dark gods' plans for months. You think to challenge Mordrak, the Despoiler? You think your pitiful crusade matters?" The Slayer didn't respond. He simply kept walking, weapons ready. "Very well, come to your death. My warriors hunger for your skull. The demon prince Azeroth will feast on your essence. And when you fall, we will turn your corpse into a monument to the futility of resistance." The Slayer reached the fortress's outer perimeter, a killing field 2 kilometers wide, cleared of cover and swept by overlapping fields of fire. Traitor Guard regiments manned the trenches. Chaos Space Marines held the bunkers. Demon packs prowled between positions, eager for prey. The Slayer walked into the killing field without hesitation. Every weapon in the fortress opened fire simultaneously. The barrage was apocalyptic. Autocannons, heavy bolters, lascannons, plasma guns, and demon-touched artillery all converging on a single target. The ground erupted in explosions, dirt and ash thrown hundreds of meters into the air. The noise was deafening, visible from the capital city 15 kilometers away as a continuous storm of fire and light. It lasted for 90 seconds. When the smoke cleared, the Chaos forces expected to find nothing, not even ash, just a crater where the Slayer had been vaporized. Instead, they found him still walking, his armor glowing cherry red from heat, smoking from 1,000 impacts, but intact. His shields, whatever technology powered them, had absorbed the worst of the barrage. Damage that should have killed him 10 times over had merely slowed him. "Impossible!" Mordrak roared. "Kill him! Kill him now!" The Chaos Space Marines charged, abandoning their fortifications and surging forward to engage in melee. Behind them, the demon prince Azeroth manifested fully, his form a towering nightmare of wings and claws, and too many mouths, reality distorting around him. The Slayer met them all. What followed was less a battle and more a natural disaster, given tactical focus. The Slayer fought like he'd fought on every world before, brutal, efficient, unstoppable. But here, facing impossible odds, something changed. His weapons ran dry within minutes. He discarded them and took others from fallen enemies. When those ran out, he fought with blades, with his hands, with chunks of broken machinery. When Chaos Space Marines tried to surround him, he used their own momentum against them, turning their formations into collisions. When demons manifested to block his path, he killed them and consumed their essence, each death feeding his momentum. He advanced meter by bloody meter toward the fortress, leaving a trail of corpses behind him. Traitor guardsmen, Chaos Space Marines, bloodletters, horrors. Nothing stopped him, nothing even slowed him for long. General Kashir, watching from the capital through long-range auspex, couldn't believe what he was seeing. How is this possible, one man against an army? Not a man, Valdez said quietly, studying the feeds. A force of nature wearing a man's shape. Look, the chaos forces are in disarray. They're pulling troops from the siege lines to stop him. He's doing exactly what he intended, drawing their attention. And dying in the process, Sister Adamara added. His armor's failing, his movements are slowing. He can't possibly... The Slayer reached the fortress's main entrance, massive gates reinforced with blessed steel and demon-forged wards. He didn't try to breach them, he simply planted every explosive he'd been carrying against the gates, activated the detonators, and waited. The explosion was massive, channeled by the fortress's own architecture into a shaped charge that blew the gates inward. The Slayer walked through the smoke into the fortress interior, where Mordrak and Azeroth waited. Behind him, the Chaos forces regrouped, consolidating around the fortress to trap him inside. The Slayer had done what he intended, drawn the enemy's entire force into a single location. Now came the hard part. The interior of Mordrak's mobile fortress was a cathedral to chaos. Corridors lined with flayed skin, chambers decorated with blasphemous trophies, machinery that ran on suffering and corruption. The air itself was toxic with warp energy, thick enough to choke unaugmented humans and drive weak-willed souls mad. The Slayer walked through it all, weapons reloaded from scavenged ammunition, armor sparking and grinding but still functional. Behind him, Chaos forces poured through the breached gates, cutting off retreat. Ahead, the fortress's corridors narrowed, funneling toward the command chamber where Mordrak waited. It was a perfect kill box, exactly where the Slayer wanted to be. The first Chaos Space Marines to catch up with him discovered why that was a mistake. The narrow corridors negated their numbers advantage, forcing them to engage 2 or 3 at a time. The Slayer exploited this mercilessly, using the environment as a weapon, collapsing ceilings on pursuers, venting atmospheric pressure to blow enemies off their feet, even redirecting the fortress's own defensive systems to fire on Chaos forces. He fought like a man who'd spent eternity learning how to kill in confined spaces. Every corner was a potential ambush point. Every junction was a tactical opportunity. Every meter gained was paid for in enemy blood. By the time he reached the command chamber's antechamber, he'd killed 47 Chaos Space Marines, uncounted cultists, and banished 9 demons. His ammunition was nearly exhausted. His armor systems were failing catastrophically, servo motors grinding to a halt, power distribution sporadic, life support compromised. But he was still moving, still fighting, still advancing. The command chamber doors opened and the demon prince Azeroth emerged. The creature had foregone subtlety, manifesting in its full warp-born glory. 4 meters tall, winged, clawed, with skin that shifted between scales and bare muscle depending on the angle of observation. Its presence alone made reality scream, the walls around it warping into impossible geometries. At last, Azeroth's voice was layered, speaking simultaneously in Gothic and the black speech of chaos. "I have waited to face you, little hunter. You who have slain so many of my kin. You who carry the stench of something other. Not chaos, not imperial. What are you?" The Slayer's response was to aim his last plasma gun, scavenged from a dead Chaos Marine. And fire. The superheated bolt struck Azeroth's chest, burning through warp stuff and drawing an enraged screech. The Demon Prince lunged, crossing the distance in a single bound, claws extended to rend and tear. The Slayer rolled under the strike, came up with a chainsword and drove it into the joint of Azeroth's wing. The demon roared, its wings spasming, and backhanded the Slayer with enough force to send him crashing through a bulkhead. The Slayer rose from the wreckage, ichor leaking from cracks in his helmet, left arm hanging at an odd angle. Broken, probably. Didn't matter. He switched the chainsword to his right hand and charged back into the fight. They fought across the command chamber and into the adjacent corridor, their battle tearing through the fortress's interior. Azeroth wielded warp fire and reality distortion, attempting to unmake the Slayer at a fundamental level. The Slayer's armor, whatever technology powered it, resisted, but each attack brought him closer to complete systems failure. Yet, he kept fighting, kept adapting, kept learning. Azeroth began to understand what his kin had learned in the moments before their deaths. The Slayer didn't fight with passion or fury or even hatred. He fought with absolute focus, treating combat as a problem to be solved. Every exchange taught him something: the demon's timing, its patterns, its weaknesses. When Azeroth attempted the same claw strike that had worked before, the Slayer was ready, dodging inside the blow and driving his chainsword into the demon's exposed abdomen. When Azeroth tried to overwhelm him with warp fire, the Slayer used a fallen Chaos Marine's corpse as a shield, then counterattacked while the demon's attention was divided. Slowly, impossibly, the Slayer was winning. "No!" Azeroth shrieked, its form destabilizing as accumulated damage overwhelmed its physical manifestation. "I am eternal. I am Chaos Ascendant. You cannot—" The Slayer grabbed the demon's head with both hands, left arm somehow still functional despite the damage, and activated every remaining explosive device, mag, locked to his armor. The detonation consumed them both in a ball of fire and force that collapsed the entire section of corridor. Azeroth's form was obliterated, his essence scattered back to the warp in a violent dispersal that would take decades to reform. The Slayer was thrown backward, armor catastrophically breached, systems failing across the board. He hit the floor hard enough to crack the decking, servos grinding to a halt, power core flickering. Through the smoke, Mordrak, the despoiler, approached. The Chaos Lord was magnificent in his corrupted glory. Terminator armor covered in trophies from 1,000 battles, weapons blessed by the dark gods themselves, augmetics that made him more demon than marine. He'd watched the battle from his command throne, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. "Impressive," Mordrak said, his voice a synthesized rasp. "You've done what I thought impossible, banished Azeroth, killed 47 of my finest warriors, brought ruin to my fortress, all alone, without support, without hope of survival." He raised his demon weapon, a chainsword fused with a bloodletter's essence, its blade screaming with perpetual hunger. "I will give you an honorable death, Slayer. Your skull will have a place of honor on my throne. Your weapons will be melted down and reforged, and your legend will serve as a warning to any who would oppose the might of chaos." The Slayer lay motionless, his armor systems completely dead. No weapons within reach, no ammunition remaining, no functional servo motors to help him rise. Mordrak raised his blade for the killing blow. The Slayer's hand shot out, grabbed Mordrak's ankle, and pulled. The Chaos Lord stumbled, surprised by the raw physical strength behind the grip, strength that shouldn't exist in a body so damaged without powered armor to augment it. The Slayer used that moment of imbalance to roll, to rise despite every injury, despite every system failure. And then he attacked with his bare hands. What followed was less combat and more mutual destruction. Mordrak's weapons and armor gave him every advantage. The Slayer had nothing but will and fury and the muscle memory of countless battles fought and won. He broke his right hand, punching through Mordrak's helmet visor, shattered his left wrist, wrenching away the Chaos Lord's demon weapon, fractured ribs, taking a power fist strike that should have killed it. The command chamber was silent except for the sound of labored breathing, one set human, one set synthesized through corrupted augmetics. The Slayer and Mordrak, the Despoiler, stood locked together, the Chaos Lord's demon weapon buried in the Slayer's side, the Slayer's hands wrapped around Mordrak's throat. Both warriors were beyond exhaustion, beyond pain, operating on nothing but will and the refusal to fall first. "You cannot win," Mordrak rasped, his augmetic voice failing as the Slayer's grip crushed components. "Even if you kill me, my warband will tear you apart." The Slayer's response was to squeeze harder. Mordrak's ceramite gorget cracked. Warning runes flashed across his helmet display as critical systems failed. The Chaos Lord tried to wrench his weapon free, to deliver a killing blow. But his strength was fading, not from injury, but from something else. That energy drain the Slayer emitted, the same effect that weakened demons, was affecting Mordrak too. The Chaos blessings sustaining him were being consumed, stripped away layer by layer. "What are you?" Mordrak whispered, genuine fear entering his voice for the first time in 3,000 years. The Slayer leaned close, his damaged helmet inches from Mordrak's visor. When he spoke, it was in that unknown language, but the words carried meaning that transcended translation. "Your end." The Slayer twisted and Mordrak's neck broke with a sound like shattering ceramics. The Chaos Lord's body went limp, his demon weapon clattering to the deck as his grip released. The corrupt blessings sustaining his ancient form collapsed without their focus. And Mordrak the Despoiler, scourge of 17 sectors, veteran of the Long War, champion of the Dark Gods, died not in glorious combat, but choking on his own failure. The Slayer released the corpse and staggered backward, finally allowing himself to acknowledge the damage. The demon weapon in his side, the countless fractures and breaks. The armor so damaged it was effectively scrap metal welded to his body. Blood, his own finally, seeping from dozens of wounds. He pulled the demon weapon from his side, felt the chaos corruption trying to spread through the wound, and simply willed it to stop. Whatever he was, whatever empowered him, rejected the taint at a fundamental level. The corruption withered, the weapon's demon essence screaming as it was consumed by that same energy drain effectum. The Slayer discarded the now inert blade and turned toward the command throne. Mordrak's strategic displays still functioned, showing the disposition of chaos forces across Belarius Secundus. With their leader dead and their demon prince banished, the warband was already fracturing, squad commanders fighting over succession, cultist auxiliaries fleeing, coordination collapsing into factional violence. The siege was broken. The city would survive. The Slayer accessed the fortress's self-destruct protocols. Every Chaos stronghold had them, insurance against capture by Imperial forces. He activated the sequence with a simple command override, his armor's remaining systems interfacing directly with the corrupted machine spirits. 15 minutes until detonation. Enough time to evacuate the fortress. Barely. The Slayer began the long walk back through the corridors he'd fought through, past the bodies of enemies he'd killed, toward the breached gates and the ash wastes beyond. Every step was agony. Every breath threatened to be his last. But he kept moving, because the mission wasn't complete until he was clear of the blast radius. Chaos forces, scattered and leaderless, occasionally tried to stop him. They died quickly, brutally, as the Slayer spent his last reserves of strength to clear his path. A cultist with an autogun, a wounded Chaos Marine attempting a final act of defiance, a lesser demon that hadn't yet received the order to retreat. All fell. All were consumed. By the time the Slayer emerged from the fortress gates, the sun was setting again. Another blood-red sky, another dying day on a world that had seen too much death. Behind him, klaxons wailed as the fortress's self-destruct reached its final countdown. He walked perhaps 100 meters into the ash wastes before his legs finally gave out. The Slayer collapsed to his knees, then forward onto his hands, armor grinding and sparking. His vision, what remained of his helmet's optics, was failing, reducing the world to fragmented images and static. His power core was dying, its energy depleted beyond emergency reserves. From the capital city, Valdez watched through magnification optics as the fortress exploded. The detonation was massive, secondary explosions from ammunition stores and warp-corrupted reactors creating a mushroom cloud visible from orbit. The shockwave rolled across the ash wastes, consuming everything within a kilometer radius. "The Slayer?" Sister Adamara asked, dread in her voice. "Outside the blast zone," Valdez confirmed, tracking the warrior's last known position. "But immobile. We need immediate extraction. Valkyries, now!" The evacuation craft launched within minutes, racing across the wastes toward the Slayer's position. They found him face down in the ash, armor completely dead, life signs barely registering on their medical auspex. When they turned him over, they discovered something that shocked even the hardened battle sisters. The Slayer's helmet had cracked, revealing the face beneath. Human. Completely, utterly human. Scarred, hardened by unimaginable combat, but fundamentally human. No mutations, no augmetics beyond what the armor provided. No evidence of chaos corruption or Xenos contamination. Just a man. A man who had killed a demon prince, destroyed a chaos warband, and broken a siege that should have been unbreakable. "Get him to the Medicae," Valdez commanded, "and pray to the Emperor he survives. The Imperium needs him." The Slayer woke 3 days later in the unyielding Testimony's Medicae bay, his body wrapped in regeneration field generators and connected to life support systems. His armor, what remained of it, sat on a nearby examination table, tech priests working desperately to understand its construction. Lord Inquisitor Valdez sat in a chair beside the bed, reading from a data slate. He looked up when the Slayer's eyes opened. "Welcome back," Valdez said simply. "You've been unconscious for 73 hours. The Medici weren't sure you'd wake at all. Your injuries were, extensive. Broken bones, internal bleeding, organ damage, and something they're calling catastrophic system shock from your armor's failure." The Slayer tried to sit up, but Valdez raised a hand. "Don't. You're still healing. Your body's regenerative capabilities are remarkable, far beyond human normal, but even you have limits." The Slayer settled back, looking at Valdez with those same cold, focused eyes, waiting. "Belarius Secundus survives," Valdez reported. "The Chaos Warband scattered after Mordrak's death. We've been hunting down stragglers, but organized resistance collapsed. General Kashir estimates you saved 3 million lives, the civilian population that was trapped in the Underhive. They've begun calling you the Angel of Death." somewhat ironic given the circumstances. The Slayer's expression didn't change. "Your armor is problematic," Valdez continued, glancing at the tech priests. "Its technology unlike anything in our archives. The Mechanicus believes it predates the Age of Strife, possibly even the Dark Age of technology. They are practically frothing at the mouth to study it, but they can't even access the basic systems without triggering defensive protocols." He leaned forward. "Here's what I know for certain. You're human in biology, but something has changed you at a fundamental level. Your body rejects chaos, corruption. Your presence weakens demons. You absorb energy from their deaths, and you possess physical capabilities that approach, possibly exceed, Space Marine enhancement, all without gene seed implantation." The Slayer simply stared, offering nothing. "I won't press you for answers you're unwilling or unable to give," Valdez said after a moment. "What matters is what you've accomplished. In 8 months, you've eliminated more demon threats than most Inquisitors manage in entire careers. You've saved worlds, broken sieges, and become something the forces of chaos have learned to fear." He stood, preparing to leave. "Your armor will be repaired as best we can manage. The Mechanicus is fabricating replacement components based on the original design. It won't be perfect, but it'll be functional. You'll be combat ready in approximately 2 weeks." Valdez paused at the door. "When you are ready, I have 17 more targets. Demon incursions, chaos strongholds, heretic warbands. The list grows faster than we can address it. The Imperium needs you, Slayer. The galaxy needs you." The Slayer nodded once. Acceptance, acknowledgement, agreement. "Rest," Valdez said. "You've earned it. The demons will still be there when you wake." After the Inquisitor left, the Slayer lay in the Medicae bed, staring at the ceiling. His body ached. His armor was destroyed. His weapons were depleted or broken. But he was alive. And as long as he was alive, he could fight. Somewhere in the galaxy, demons existed. They spread corruption, caused suffering, served dark gods who fed on mortal anguish. And he existed to kill them. It was simple, pure, the only truth he needed. The Slayer closed his eyes, allowing his body to heal, building strength for the battles to come. Because in the 41st millennium, there was only war, and he was very, very good at war. 2 weeks later, the Slayer stood on the observation deck of the Unyielding Testimony, his armor rebuilt, his weapons reloaded, his body healed. Before him, the void stretched infinite and dark, punctuated by stars that had witnessed 10,000 years of humanity's struggle against the dark. Behind him, Lord Inquisitor Valdez entered, carrying a new data slate. "Your next target," he said, handing it over. "A demon-infested space hulk in the Jericho Reach. Estimated 300 possessed crew, multiple demon manifestations, and something the astropaths are calling a warp scar. A tear in reality that's growing larger every day." The Slayer studied the information, his expressionless helmet reflecting the starlight. "The Ordo Malleus has officially recognized your existence," Valdez continued. "They're calling you Asset Omega, a weapon of last resort against demonic threats. Some want to study you, others want to control you, a few want you destroyed. Just to be safe." The Slayer looked at Valdez, waiting for the point. "I've managed to keep them at bay for now, arguing that your effectiveness speaks for itself, that attempting to control or dissect you would be counterproductive, but eventually they'll push harder. Eventually you'll have to answer their questions or face their consequences." The Slayer's response was to turn back to the viewport, to the infinite darkness beyond. Somewhere out there, demons existed. That was all that mattered. Valdez smiled despite himself. "I thought you'd say that. Or rather, not say that." He moved to stand beside the Slayer, both warriors looking out at the galaxy. You know, there's a theory among the ecclesiarchy that the Emperor, in his infinite wisdom, sometimes creates weapons specifically suited to the threats they must face. The Space Marines to fight his wars, the Grey Knights to battle demons, the Custodians to guard his throne. He glanced at the Slayer. Perhaps you're another such weapon, created not by the Emperor but by some other force, sent here to fight a war that has no end, against enemies that cannot truly die, a perpetual crusade, an eternal hunt. The Slayer said nothing, but something in his posture suggested agreement, or perhaps acceptance. This was what he was, what he'd always been, a slayer of demons. In his old universe, in this new one, across whatever realities might come. The purpose never changed, only the targets. "The shuttle is ready when you are," Valdez said, stepping back. "May the Emperor guide your blade, Slayer, and may the demons learn to fear the sound of your footsteps." The Slayer walked toward the boarding bay, past crew members who stepped aside respectfully, past battle sisters who offered silent nods of acknowledgement, past tech priests who whispered prayers to the Omnissiah. He'd fought in hell before. He'd won in hell before. This hell, this 41st millennium, where demons were gods and war was eternal, was just another battlefield. And battlefields were where he belonged. As the Slayer's shuttle launched toward the demon-infested space hulk, Sister Adamara stood beside Valdez on the observation deck. "Do you think he'll ever stop?" she asked quietly. "Ever find peace?" Valdez watched the shuttle disappear into the void. "I don't think he wants peace, sister. I think he wants exactly what he has, an endless war against an eternal enemy, purpose without complication, clarity without compromise. That sounds like hell." "Perhaps," Valdez agreed, "or perhaps for a warrior like him, it's the closest thing to heaven he'll ever know." In the shuttle, alone except for the servitor pilot, the Slayer checked his weapons one final time. Super shotgun loaded, multi-melta charged, combat blade sharpened, armor systems optimal, ready. The space hulk loomed ahead, a twisted cathedral of corrupted metal and warp stuff, crawling with demons that would soon learn what their kin across 17 worlds had learned, that something had come to this universe, something that couldn't be corrupted, couldn't be stopped, couldn't be reasoned with, something that existed for one purpose only. And that purpose was written in demon blood across 100 battlefields, would be written across 1,000 more. Rip and tear until it is done.